आप對女兵受禮節。
Hello and welcome to Hollywood at Home from Arizona Public Media. I'm Victoria Lucas. Tonight's film is director Steven Spielberg's epic coming-of-age drama, Empire of the Sun from 1987. Based on author J.G. Ballard's semi-autobiographical novel, it's the story of an upper-class English schoolboy living with his diplomat parents in Shanghai, China, whose life is shattered by the outbreak of World War II as he ends up desperately trying to survive in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. Now, Spielberg was originally set to produce the movie, with one of his cinematic heroes, the great David Lean, directing. You remember him from Bridge on the River Kwai and Lawrence of Arabia, right? But when the 79-year-old Lean dropped out of the project, feeling unable to make the long trip for location shooting in China, Spielberg jumped at the chance to direct. He loved the novel and was determined to create the film in the mold of Lean's epics, which he had long considered key influences in his own career. He was also excited by the prospect of making a movie that would appeal to him as a filmmaker, rather than always wanting to please the audience. In his words, "I thought Empire was a great way of changing the way I tell stories." Plus, he was about to turn 40, and again, in his words, "I had reached a saturation point. I really needed to do a movie with grown-up themes, so the timing of Empire may have been more than coincidence." Spielberg had previously been drawn to the era of World War II in his movies 1941 and Indiana Jones, and later, of course, in Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan. He told an interviewer prior to filming, "I'm personally closer to the 1940s than I am to the 80s. My father was a radio operator in a bomber squadron, and he filled my head with stories after the war. So I've identified all my life with that period of youthful innocence in the midst of carnage and tremendous jeopardy." Spielberg hired acclaimed playwright turned Oscar-nominated screenwriter Tom Stoppard to write the screenplay, with a good deal of input from Spielberg himself. As Stoppard said, "Stephen introduced elements and pushed the story in new directions in our meetings. We discussed a lot of ideas, then I would go away and write it." One major challenge, as you might guess, would be finding the right young actor to play the lead role of the boy who appears in nearly every frame of the film while aging from 10 to 13 years old. Nearly 4,000 boys auditioned for the part before 12-year-old Christian Bale was cast. He'd started acting 3 years earlier after his sister was cast in a musical, and as he put it, "I thought it was really good fun and it looked easy." He had performed small parts on stage, television, and in commercials, but he had never done a feature film. Spielberg, of course, has always had a reputation for getting great performances out of children, but when asked how he made Bale look so good, he replied, "When a director casts a part right, the job is half done. I think I have a good eye for casting, and with Christian, it worked exactly that way. He is a wonderful, intuitive actor, and he made me look awfully good." And while they were sifting through all those young acting hopefuls, another huge issue was being dealt with: where to shoot the movie. The Chinese government had not allowed an American company to film inside the country since the 1949 revolution, and it appeared unlikely they would make an exception, even for Spielberg. So where else could Spielberg reproduce Shanghai with its teeming streets and jammed harbor? The producers embarked on a major search for another Asian location that could resemble Shanghai in 1941, and then their luck changed. After nearly a year of negotiation, China finally granted permission for a 3-week shoot in Shanghai in early March 1987. And, as it turned out, the local Chinese authorities were extremely helpful in facilitating sequences that were occasionally monumental, even by Spielberg standards. Logistical support included blocking streets when required for filming, sometimes for multiple days, controlling spectators to keep them out of the way, and allowing the production to change signage to traditional Chinese characters for authenticity. And while most of the main crew was British, the Shanghai Film Studios provided hundreds of additional staff and crew over the course of the shoot, including technicians, interpreters, office workers, security personnel, and assistant directors for staging crowd scenes. And that last group was certainly needed. Remember, these were the days before computer-generated imagery was common, so crowd scenes were shot with real people. 5,000 local extras in period costume were used in 2 different sequences, with Spielberg later commenting, "Some of the people we had as extras had been there during the Japanese incursion into Shanghai. 45 years later, they still remembered it all. We put them in the foreground of the shots because their faces spoke a truth about what had happened to them." Once the Shanghai shoot was completed, and before moving on to the prison camp and airfield being built in Spain, Spielberg participated in a seminar attended by filmmakers from all across China, writers, directors, cinematographers, editors, actors, to discuss movies and movie making. Spielberg later said it was one of his best experiences. As he put it, "We discovered that film is a common language on this planet, and we did not need an interpreter to understand that we all face the same problems and share the same needs." In addition to young Christian Bale, Empire of the Sun features powerful performances by John Malkovich as a cunning and manipulative American ship steward, now stranded in Shanghai, who befriends the boy. Nigel Havers plays a sympathetic doctor, and Miranda Richardson is the socialite who becomes almost a mother figure to the boy. Also, keep an eye out for Ben Stiller in a small role as an American soldier. And because people always ask, the beautiful song that the young boy sings, and which is later used throughout the movie, is a Welsh lullaby called Siugan, dating from around the year 1794, with lyrics about a mother protecting a child so he can sleep peacefully. But no, that is not Christian Bale singing. He's lip-syncing to famous boy soprano James Rainbird. And now it's time for the show, so please sit back and enjoy this moving and inspiring story of a boy who, to quote the famous Chinese proverb, lives in interesting times and is forced to grow up too soon and too quickly. From 1987, it's Empire of the Sun.